They say the Great Lakes hold more secrets than the ocean itself. Ships vanish without a trace, entire crews swallowed by the mist. But one legend refuses to stay buried, a ghost ship, seen drifting on moonlit waters with no living soul aboard. Its deck creaks, lanterns swing, and if you dare to look too long, you might just see the faces of those who were lost staring back at you. Tonight, we unveil the truth behind the ghost ship of the Great Lakes. They say the Great Lakes are more than just lakes. To those who've sailed them, they are oceans, endless, merciless, and alive. Stretching across the heart of North America, these waters have swallowed entire ships whole, leaving nothing but whispers behind. Over 6,000 vessels lie at the bottom, their bones scattered across the cold, black depths, and more than 30,000 souls gone without a trace. But of all the stories born from the lake's fury, one legend lingers longer than the rest. The story of a ship that was never found, because it never truly sank. Sailors call it the ghost ship of the Great Lakes. Eyewitnesses describe it as a 19th century schooner, sails billowing even when no wind blows. Its deck gleams white beneath the moonlight, its lanterns swaying as though tended by unseen hands. It glides silently across the water, and then, just as suddenly, it fades into the mist. But those who have looked closely, too closely, swear they saw something more. Figures, shadowed forms pacing the deck, faces pressed against the windows, pale, wide-eyed, and gasping for breath. The earliest known report dates back to the 1940s. A fisherman named Walter Higgins was trawling the waters of Lake Superior on a still, moonlit night. His engine sputtered, his radio static filled, and then the fog rolled in. Walter later swore under oath that a ship emerged from the haze. Tall masts, white sails, a schooner glowing faintly against the darkness. At first, he thought it was real. He flashed his lantern, expecting some signal in return. But none came. Instead, he saw them, shapes moving on the deck, and then, closer, clearer, a face, pressed against a round glass window near the stern. Its eyes were wide, mouth open in a silent scream, and when Walter blinked, it was gone. He returned to shore at dawn, shaken to his core. The Coast Guard dismissed his account as fatigue, maybe a trick of the mist. But Walter refused to sail that stretch of water again. And he was not alone. Over the decades, reports of the phantom schooner multiplied. Captains swore they saw it vanish into fog banks where no ship could possibly hide. Some even claimed it crossed directly in front of their course, forcing them to turn away, only for it to vanish seconds later. Skeptics called it mirage, an illusion caused by the unique way heat and cold bend light on the lakes. But sailors, they knew better. They spoke of the Bannockburn, a Canadian freighter that vanished in 1902, often called the Flying Dutchman of Lake Superior. Rumors spread that the Bannockburn had never truly sunk, that its crew still wandered the waters in eternal search for home. Others believed it was the Griffin, the first ship ever built to sail the Great Lakes in the 1600s. Commanded by French explorer La Salle, it disappeared without a trace, its fate unknown. For centuries, people have whispered that the Griffin still sails, cursed to roam the lakes forever. Whether Bannockburn, Griffin, or something older still, the sightings carried one thing in common. Whenever the ghost ship appeared, disaster followed. Sailors learned to fear its presence. They said it was a harbinger, a warning. If you saw the phantom schooner on the water, your own ship might not live to see the shore. Storms rose without warning. Waves towered like walls of black glass. Engines failed, radios went silent, compasses spun wildly. And when the skies finally cleared, another vessel had vanished. Even those who never saw it with their own eyes still swore they felt it. An unnatural silence on the waves. The cold grip of dread, crawling over the skin. The sense that something was near watching. But the most terrifying detail comes not from sailors, but from those on shore. On certain nights, when the fog rolls heavy across the lakes, residents have reported hearing it. The mournful creak of timber, the faint clatter of chains, and once, just once, a bell tolling from far out at sea. Yet no ship was scheduled, and none ever came into harbor. The Great Lakes are said to keep their secrets well, but the ghost ship refuses to be forgotten. Its legend continues to surface, drifting across generations, chilling every sailor who dares speak its name. And this is only the beginning. Because behind every whisper, behind every phantom light and fading sail, lies the history of true tragedies. Real ships, real men, real disappearances that have left scars upon these waters. And if the stories are true, then the ghost ship of the Great Lakes is not a single vessel at all. It is all of them. Every lost sailor, every drowned soul, every tragedy bound together into one eternal phantom, doomed to sail the lakes until the end of time. And if you ever find yourself alone on the shore at night, listen carefully. You might just hear the waves carrying their voices, calling you to join them. Beneath the surface of the Great Lakes lies a graveyard, not of stone, but of steel and wood. Not of names carved in marble, but of names whispered by the waves. Over the centuries, the lakes have claimed thousands of ships, but some stand out more than others. Wrecks so mysterious, so violent, that they've become immortal. And when people speak of the ghost ship, it is always tied back to one of these stories. Let us begin with the very first. The Griffin, the vanishing pioneer in 1679. French explorer René Robert Cavelier Sieur de La Salle built the first ship ever to sail the Great Lakes. He named it Le Griffin. It was a sturdy bark, its sails full of promise, carrying furs and supplies across waters few Europeans had ever dared to cross. But on September 18th of that same year, the Griffin vanished. La Salle sent it from Green Bay, Wisconsin, to return to Niagara with a cargo of valuable furs. It never arrived. Not a plank, not a mast, not a body was ever found. For centuries, historians have searched for its remains. None succeeded. Some believe hostile tribes destroyed it. Others think a storm ripped it apart. But among sailors, a different story grew. They said the Griffin was cursed from the beginning, for La Salle had disrespected the spirits of the lakes. They whispered that the vessel still sailed, doomed to roam forever, carrying its lost crew into eternity. And when witnesses described the ghost ship today, tall masts, white sails glowing against the night, many believe they are seeing the Griffin. The Bannockburn, the Flying Dutchman of Lake Superior, fast forward more than 2 centuries to the icy waters of Lake Superior. It was November of 1902 when the Bannockburn, a Canadian steamship, set out with a load of grain. The weather was cold but manageable, at least at first. The last confirmed sighting came from another vessel, the Algonquin. Its captain reported that the Bannockburn passed by at dusk, steaming strong into the night. Then, without warning, it was gone. Search parties scoured the lake. Nothing. No wreckage. No survivors. No explanation. Newspapers called it the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes. And even now, more than 100 years later, sailors claim to see the Bannockburn reappear in Superior's fog. Always silent, always sailing strong, but never reaching shore. One chilling report from the 1940s described a freighter crew spotting the Bannockburn, its lights glowing faintly across the waves. They radioed out, but no reply came. And then, as they drew closer, the ship vanished. Only a patch of dead, still water remained where the waves should have been. To this day, the Bannockburn is believed to be one of the most likely identities of the ghost ship. The Edmund Fitzgerald, the storm that sang a dirge, the most famous wreck of all, came in 1975. The Edmund Fitzgerald, called the Mighty Fitz, was the pride of the Great Lakes fleet. At over 700 feet long, it was nearly as large as an ocean liner. Its captain, Ernest McSorley, was a seasoned veteran. On November 10th, the Fitzgerald set out across Lake Superior. A storm was brewing, but she was built for such challenges. At least everyone believed she was. As night fell, winds howled to hurricane force. Waves rose to heights of 25 feet, crashing over the deck. The ship's radar failed, leaving her nearly blind, and then just after 700 p.m. she disappeared from sight. No distress signal, no SOS, just silence. When rescuers finally reached the area, all they found was wreckage. Lifeboats split, debris floating in the freezing water. All 29 men aboard were lost. Some say the ghost ship of the Great Lakes is the Fitzgerald herself, her lanterns forever burning, her crew forever pacing her decks. Others claim the souls of the 29 joined the phantom fleet that haunts these waters, adding their voices to the whispers in the mist. The weight of history, and these are only the most famous tragedies. There was the Lady Elgin in 1860, killed over 300 when it collided with another ship. The Eastland in 1915 capsized in the Chicago River, drowning more than 800 in minutes. The Carl D. Bradley in 1958 split in two, dragging 33 men to their deaths. Every ship lost, every crew taken feeds the legend. Because sailors don't believe the ghost ship is a single vessel. They believe it is all of them, a fleet of the drowned, a phantom armada, pieced together from every wreck the lakes have claimed. And when you see it rising from the fog, drifting silently across the waves, you're not looking at one tragedy. You're staring at centuries of sorrow, all bound into one eternal nightmare. The folklore long before Europeans arrived, the indigenous peoples of the Great Lakes told stories of water spirits. The Ojibwe spoke of Mishipeshu, the great water panther who ruled the depths. The Menominee warned of horned serpents that guarded the lakes from intruders. To them, the lakes were sacred, alive, and when ships began to vanish, many believed these spirits were reclaiming what was theirs. Even now, some elders insist the ghost ship is no phantom at all, but a warning, a message from the lakes themselves. You may sail me, but you do not own me. And so the legend of the ghost ship grows, fed by every tragedy, every storm, every missing soul. It is not only a ghost story, it is history. History buried beneath the waves but never forgotten. And if history is true, then the most terrifying part is not what's in the past. It's what's still to come. Because every time the ghost ship is seen, another storm is near. And another name is about to be added to the lake's endless graveyard. Sailors are a superstitious breed. They live between life and death, carried on waters that can turn from calm to chaos in moments. And when you live that close to danger, you begin to believe in signs. On the Great Lakes, these signs became law. Never whistle on a ship, it calls the wind. Never rename a vessel, it offends the spirits. Never speak of the dead at sea, for the drowned are always listening. And above all, never ignore a warning, because sailors believed that the Great Lakes themselves could hear. And when you broke the code, they would answer with storms. The logbook of the Bannockburn. In the decades after the Bannockburn vanished in 1902, rumors spread that fragments of its wreckage had surfaced. Most were false alarms, but one story persisted. In the 1920s, a tattered captain's logbook was said to have been found floating near Whitefish Bay. The cover was swollen with water, its pages nearly illegible, but a handful of entries could still be read. The final page was the most chilling. Written in shaky hand, the words seemed frantic, as if the writer had been rushing between sentences and storms. There is something in the fog. It follows us. The men have seen it too. A schooner with white sails. No sound. No flag. We tried to signal her. No reply. It vanishes, then returns, always closer. If this is my last entry, no, we were not alone. Some dismissed the story as fabrication, an invention to feed the legend. But old sailors swore the log was real, and that the pages smelled of lake water even after years locked in drawers. The idea haunted every captain who read it, because if true, the Bannockburn had not been sunk by storm or ice. It had been hunted. Curses at sea on the Great Lakes, even before the ghost ship sightings. Curses were whispered between crews. There was the curse of the bell. If a ship's bell rang by itself at night, someone would die before morning. The curse of the coin. If no silver coin was nailed beneath the mast, the ship would never see safe harbor. And the curse of the drowned. To pull up a body in fishing nets meant bad luck so severe the boat itself might not return. These weren't jokes. These were laws written in fear, because men who ignored them often disappeared. The tale of the Noronic. In 1949, the passenger steamer Noronic burned in Toronto Harbor, killing 119 people. Survivors later spoke of hearing screams long after the flames were out. Dockworkers swore they saw faces in the smoke. Though the Noronic wasn't a wreck beneath the waves, sailors still claimed its victims had joined the Phantom Fleet. And from that day forward, a new superstition spread. Never mock the dead of the lakes, for if you laugh at their fate, they will come for you in the fog. The lighthouse keeper's account. One of the most chilling encounters came not from a sailor, but from a lighthouse keeper. In 1937, James McIntyre tended the remote lighthouse on Isle Royale. One stormy night, while refilling the lamp oil, he looked out and froze. A schooner was approaching through the gale. Its sails whipped with unnatural force, though the wind came from the opposite direction. Lanterns glowed, swinging wildly, and on the deck, he swore he saw dozens of men soaked, pale, their faces turned upward toward the light. He rushed to the signal lamp to guide them in, but as the beam swept across the water, the schooner was gone. The next morning, wreckage from a fishing vessel washed ashore near the lighthouse. All 5 crewmen were dead. James McIntyre resigned within the month. He told friends he had seen the crew before they drowned, and were said that they had already been aboard the ghost ship when it passed. The curse of recognition. What makes the ghost ship so terrifying is not only its appearance. It is time and again survivors have reported seeing faces they knew. In 1953, 2 sailors out of Duluth claimed to have seen their old captain aboard the Phantom schooner, though that same captain had died 20 years earlier in a wreck. In 1978, a fisherman reported seeing his cousin waving from the deck of the ghost ship. The cousin had drowned in Lake Erie the year before, and in the 1990s, a freighter crew swore that the figures pacing the ghostly deck looked familiar. When pressed, they admitted they resembled the very men standing beside them on their own ship. As if the Phantom was not only of the past, but also of the future. The weight of the curse to sailors, the curse is clear. See the ship once and you may escape. See it twice and your fate is sealed, because the ghost ship does not simply appear. It waits, it follows, it remembers. And when it returns for you, there is no running. The fog will come, the lights will fade, and your name will join the endless roll call whispered across the lakes, superstitions, logbooks, curses carried across generations. All point to one truth. The ghost ship is not only a warning, it is a promise. Every man who sails the Great Lakes knows that promise by heart, that sooner or later the lakes will take what they are owed. And when the mist rises, and the Phantom schooner cuts across the waves, the drowned will rise to collect their due. Fog is the great deceiver of the lakes. It rolls in silently, swallowing horizon and shoreline alike, leaving sailors adrift in a gray void where sound travels strangely and sight becomes meaningless. And it is within this fog that the ghost ship most often appears. The fishermen of the 1960s. In the summer of 1962, 3 fishermen out of Marquette, Michigan, returned to Port Pale as corpses. Their boat was intact. Their nets were full, but the men could barely speak. At last, one of them, an old man named Carter, gave his account. They had been fishing in calm waters when the fog crept in, so thick they could barely see the bow of their own boat. Suddenly, through the haze, a schooner emerged, tall white sails billowing. Thinking it a real vessel, they shouted and waved their lanterns. No answer came, but then Carter noticed something wrong. The ship was silent. No splash of water against its hull. No voices. No sound of sails snapping in the wind. As it drew closer, Carter swore he saw faces on the deck, dozens of them. But not one moved. Not one blinked. They simply stared as if carved from pale stone. The fishermen tried to follow. They rowed, chasing the schooner into the fog. But in an instant it was gone. The waters before them were flat and empty. When they told their story on shore, some laughed. But the look in their eyes silenced the room. These men had not seen a mirage. They had seen something else. The freighter of 1994, perhaps the most famous modern encounter, came from the Walter J. McCarthy Jeaner, a massive freighter that carried coal across Lake Superior. On a stormy night in 1994, their radar detected a vessel approaching through the fog. A large schooner, sailing fast. The crew sounded their horn, no response. They radioed across all channels. Silence. As the blip drew closer, the watchmen on deck strained their eyes through the mist. And then they saw it. A tall, masted ship, white sails full despite the dead calm. Lanterns glowed on its deck, and shadowy figures moved along the railings. The freighter slowed to avoid collision, but just as the vessel came within range, it vanished. Not only to the eye, but from the radar itself. The captain logged the encounter but instructed the crew never to speak of it again. Still, sailors talk. And soon, the story spread like wildfire across the Great Lakes. Some say one crewman quit the next day, muttering that he had seen his brother's face aboard the Phantom ship. His brother had drowned years earlier in a wreck on Lake Erie. The radio silence in 2016, a smaller cargo vessel reported a phenomenon so unsettling it shook even seasoned sailors. As they crossed Lake Michigan, a dense fog fell without warning. Every radio on board went dead. The compass spun aimlessly, and in the distance a ship's bell tolled, deep, hollow, echoing across the mist. The men tried desperately to raise the Coast Guard. Nothing, and then a schooner appeared alongside them. Its sails glowed faintly in the fog, its lantern swaying. One sailor swore he saw children on the deck waving silently. Another claimed he saw women in long dresses. But when the fog shifted, the figures were gone. Within moments, the schooner itself faded, dissolving into the gray. When the fog lifted, their instruments returned. The radios buzzed back to life, the compass steadied. But not one of the crew could ever forget what they saw. The vanishing tugboat in 1981, a tugboat named Howard M., was reported missing for 2 full days on Lake Erie. Search teams found no wreckage, no distress calls. And then, without explanation, the boat reappeared near Cleveland, battered but afloat. The crew was alive but shaken. When pressed, the captain admitted they had spent 2 days lost in thick fog. Their instruments had gone dead. Food and water lasted, but time felt strange. The most disturbing detail: every man claimed they had seen another ship moving alongside them through the fog. A schooner, silent, its lanterns glowing. They swore it matched the description of the ghost ship. When asked what happened to the missing time, the captain simply shook his head and said, "We weren't alone. But I don't think we were in this world either." What the fog hides, the fog has become part of the ghost ship's curse. Sailors believe it is the curtain between worlds, the veil through which the dead can pass. When the fog comes heavy, compasses spin, radios fail, and then the boundary between the living and the drowned grows thin. Some even claim the fog itself carries voices, cries, prayers, whispers in languages long forgotten, and those who listen too closely never return the same. The ghost ship is not bound by time. It has appeared to fishermen in the 1940s, freighters in the 1990s, and cargo crews just years ago. Always in the fog, always silent, always bringing with it the promise of disaster, because every sighting ends the same way. When the schooner fades, a storm follows, and by morning another ship is gone. The encounters are undeniable. The records exist, the testimonies remain. Call it superstition, call it hallucination, call it whatever you wish, but the sailors who lived it will tell you, the fog does not lie, and in the fog the dead still sail. Every sailor knows the lakes are dangerous, but what happened in the autumn of 1994 is unlike anything ever recorded. It began on a cold October night when a small steel-hulled freighter, the SS Bannockburn II, left Thunder Bay, Ontario, bound for Salt Sea. Marie, it carried grain, routine cargo, routine voyage. The weather was calm, the skies clear. There were 22 crewmen aboard, all of them experienced, all of them ready for the long haul. But only 19 would return. The first distress call at 20:14 a.m., the U.S. Coast Guard received a garbled transmission from the Bannockburn II. The voice was faint, broken by static. "We have fog, dead stop, ship ahead." No response, and then silence. Attempts to reach the freighter failed. Radar showed the vessel moving at half speed into dense fog near Whitefish Bay. Nothing unusual, until the ship vanished completely from radar at 20:32 a.m. No wreckage, no mayday, just gone. For 3 full days, search crews scoured Lake Superior. Planes flew low, boats crisscrossed the waters, but there was nothing. Not a board, not an oil slick. The Bannockburn had disappeared. The return. On the morning of the 4th day, the freighter reappeared. A Coast Guard cutter spotted her drifting south of Isle Royale. She was battered, her paint scorched in places, her navigation lights flickering. But she was afloat, and more importantly, she was crewed. The cutter hailed her by radio. This time a voice answered, but the voice was flat, hollow, almost mechanical. Bannockburn II, returning to port. Do not board. That was the last transmission received. When the freighter finally docked in Salt Sea, Marie investigators swarmed the vessel. The crew disembarked slowly, moving like men half asleep. Their skin was pale, their eyes glazed. 3 men were missing, and those who survived refused to speak of what had happened in the fog. The captain's journal for weeks. Silence surrounded the event. Officials declared it a navigational mishap, dismissing the missing crew as lost overboard. But one piece of evidence slipped through the cracks. The captain's journal, found in his cabin. The final entries were chilling. October 14th, 2000 am, fog thicker than any I've seen. Instruments dead. Compasses spinning. A ship ahead. Sails full though no wind, lanterns glow but too still, men uneasy, 2:20 a.m. They stand on the deck, dozens of them, watching, faces pale, eyes dark. 2:28 a.m., fog swallowing us. Lights dead, engines gone, men whispering prayers. The ship is alongside now, it is the Bannockburn. It is us. The entry ends mid-sentence. The crew speaks. When journalists press the surviving crewmen, most refuse to comment. But one, known only as Peter, eventually spoke to a Detroit paper. His testimony was never officially confirmed, but it spread like wildfire among sailors. According to Peter, the Bannockburn had sailed into a fog bank so thick, the world beyond the deck vanished. The compasses spun uselessly. The radios went dead. And then, out of the fog, another ship appeared, an identical copy of their own vessel. It matched them perfectly. Same hull, same paint, even the same name across its bow. On the deck stood men, 22 of them, dressed in their own uniforms. They were staring back at themselves. Peter claimed the Doppelganger ship sailed alongside for hours. And then, without warning, 3 crewmen began walking toward the rail. They did not speak. They did not resist. They simply stepped into the fog and vanished. By dawn, the phantom ship was gone. The fog lifted, and the Bannockburn Secca limped home -3 men. The missing time, the strangest part of the incident, wasn't the fog. It wasn't the ghostly ship. It wasn't even the missing men. It was the time. When the Bannockburn 2 reappeared, her clocks showed the correct hour. But her logbooks, besides the captain's journal, were missing 3 full days of entries. The crew swore they had only been gone for a single night, and yet, search records proved the vessel was invisible for 72 hours. Some investigators believe the ship slipped into another dimension. Others say the crew was caught in a shared hallucination, but sailors on the lakes whisper a different theory. They say the Bannockburn 2 was taken by the ghost ship and only partially returned. Whispers in the fog. Since 1994, multiple vessels have reported hearing strange radio interference when passing near Whitefish Bay. Static mixed with faint voices. One recording exists, captured accidentally by a Coast Guard vessel in 2007. It is faint, broken, but chilling. Fog, we see her, men on deck, they look like. The voice cuts out, but the timestamp matches the exact night the Bannockburn had disappeared. Was it an echo, a replay of the event, or something else entirely? The Bannockburn 2 still sails, her crew still works. But among Great Lakes sailors, she carries a darker name, the ship that came back wrong. Because in the fog, not everything that returns is what it seems. For centuries, sailors have whispered that Lake Superior is alive. Not in the way of wind and waves, but in something darker. Something that watches, remembers, and waits. Every culture that settled along the Great Lakes carried stories of phantom ships, drowned souls, and storms that seemed to rise from nowhere. But what ties them all together is a single, repeating curse. A ship that appears from the fog. A ship that takes men away. A ship that never truly dies. The earliest sightings, the first written record, dates back to 1679, when French explorer René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de La Salle, launched Le Griffin, the first full-sized ship to sail the Great Lakes. La Salle was warned by local tribes not to disturb the waters near Manitoulin Island. They spoke of a spirit canoe, a phantom vessel said to ferry lost souls across the lake at night. But he ignored them, and within weeks, Le Griffin vanished, its entire crew swallowed by a storm. To this day, divers have never found her wreck. Some say she was the ghost ship's first victim. The curse of the Bannockburn 2 centuries later, in 1902, the freighter Bannockburn departed from Fort William with a load of grain. She never arrived. Search parties found no wreckage, no bodies, just emptiness. But weeks later, fishermen on Lake Superior reported seeing a burned, twisted freighter drifting silently through the fog. When they hailed her, the ship vanished. That phantom was given a name, the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes, and ever since, sailors have claimed to glimpse her on stormy nights, glowing faintly, crewless, doomed to wander forever. The drowning grounds, it is not just ships that vanish, it is men. Near Whitefish Bay, where the Bannockburn 2 disappeared in 1994, there is a stretch of water locals call the Drowning Grounds. Fishermen swear that on calm nights the water looks like glass, too calm, too still. And when you lean over the side, you don't see your reflection. You see someone else. Some claim it's their drowned kin, others say it's themselves, but dead, staring back as if from another timeline. More than once a fisherman has leaned too far and slipped quietly into the water. Their bodies are rarely recovered, and the survivors tell the same story. The water pulled them down like hands. The curse repeated. If this was just old folklore, it could be dismissed. But the pattern repeats. 1916, the Western Reserve, a passenger ship struck by sudden storm. Survivors reported another vessel following them for hours before the sinking. 1940, the SS Arlington. Her captain locked himself in his cabin, claiming he saw a ship mirroring them across the water. He went down with his vessel. 1965, the Bradley. The sole survivor swore he heard voices on the wind calling his name from the fog. And then 1994, the Bannockburn. The cycle continues. The sailor's warning. Among sailors, a quiet belief has grown. They call it the rule of sevens. Every 70 years or close to it, a ship is taken fully by the ghost ship, and in between smaller encounters occur echoes, visions, doppelgangers. 1902, the Bannockburn. 1975, the Edmund Fitzgerald. 1994, the Bannockburn. The next full cycle, they say, is approaching, and no sailor wants to be on Superior when it arrives. The Phantom's nature. But what is the ghost ship? Some believe it is a time-looped vessel, forever replaying its last doomed voyage, dragging others into its curse. Others insist it is a spiritual ferry, gathering souls like a reaper. And then there are those who whisper that the ship is not a ship at all, but the lake itself, a projection, a lure, like an anglerfish calling prey closer. Because when the fog rolls in, the lake wants something, and it always takes it. The diver's discovery. In 2012, a team of divers claimed to have found a wreck near Isle Royale that matched the Bannockburn's description. But when they descended, something strange happened. Their instruments failed, lights flickered, cameras cut out, and when they surfaced, one diver, an experienced man with hundreds of dives behind him, refused to go back. All he said was, "It's not a wreck, it's waiting." He never dove the Great Lakes again. The legacy today: sailors still leave offerings before major voyages. A coin tossed into the water, a whispered prayer. Even modern crews of steel freighters carry old superstitions. Because deep down they all know the ghost ship is real. It chooses who it takes. And once you see her, your fate is sealed. The Great Lakes may be freshwater seas, but they hold secrets darker than any ocean. And the ghost ship is not just a story. It is a curse, a legacy, and soon her cycle will begin again. Some stories end with answers. This one ends with a warning. For centuries, the ghost ship of the Great Lakes has been glimpsed, whispered about, feared. But until recently, no one had ever claimed to face it directly and live to tell the tale. Until now, the night of the storm. It was November 2021. A freighter named the Calypso Dawn left Thunder Bay with a routine shipment of ore. She was built with modern steel radar, GPS, reinforced hull plating. Nothing like the wooden ships of the past. Her captain laughed when crewmen muttered about November storms. "We've got satellites," he said. "We've got tech. The lake can't touch us." He was wrong. The first sign 2 days into the voyage, the weather shifted. The winds rose, the waves heaved, but the instruments stayed quiet. No storm warnings, no advisories, just clear skies on the radar. Yet outside, the lake roared like a living thing. The crew swore they saw something on the horizon, a silhouette. A freighter, blackened, warped, trailing smoke. The captain tried hailing it, no response. Then the radios died. The vanishing vessel. As the Calypso Dawn pushed forward, the phantom ship seemed to mirror every move. Turn starboard, she turned starboard. Cut speed, she cut speed. The crew began to panic. Some claimed they could see figures on her deck. Men frozen in place, their faces pale as bone. And then in one blink, she was gone. But the air didn't feel right. The fog rolled in thick, suffocating, swallowing sound itself. And that's when the real nightmare began. The doppelganger crew, one by one. The men of the Calypso Dawn reported seeing something impossible, their own reflections, walking across the fog. A deckhand claimed he saw himself, soaked and shivering, standing at the rail of the phantom ship. The engineer swore he saw his own face staring back from a porthole that wasn't there a moment before. And the captain, he locked himself in his cabin, refusing to look out the window, because he too had seen his double. and it was drowning. The survivor's account by dawn. The Calypso Dawn was gone. Wreckage washed ashore near Copper Harbor. Twisted steel splintered lifeboats. But against all odds, one man survived. An apprentice sailor named Elias Harper, found drifting in a life ring nearly frozen. When rescued, he muttered incoherently for hours. When he finally spoke, his words were written down, and they chilled even the Coast Guard. Elias said, "It wasn't a storm, it wasn't the water. It was her. The ship, she came for us. She wanted us. And when she looked at me, I knew if I stayed, I'd become her crew. So I jumped. I didn't escape, I was released." He refused to sail again. To this day, he will not speak near water. The final unveiling. So what is the ghost ship? Not a wreck, not a hallucination, not even just a curse, but something older, something vast, the Great Lakes themselves given form, a collector of souls, using the shape of a ship to lure its prey. Every lost vessel, every drowned man, every whispered legend, they're all part of her. The ghost ship is not a single ship, it is all of them. The Bannockburn, the Fitzgerald, the Calypso Dawn, a single, endless vessel, stitched together by tragedy, reborn with every storm. And every 70 years she takes more. The next cycle, sailors whisper that the cycle is already beginning again. The waters are restless. The storms more violent. And if the legends are true, the next full claiming is near. The Great Lakes will choose another vessel, another crew, another story to add to her ghostly hull. And when the fog rolls across Superior, perhaps you'll hear it too. The hollow ring of a bell. The echo of footsteps on a deck that isn't there. The pull of water at your feet. And then silence. The ghost ship of the Great Lakes has been seen. It has been heard. It has been survived. But it has never been stopped. Because you cannot stop the lake. You can only hope it does not call your name.